A delicate violin melody drifts through the grand ballroom, elegant notes weaving through the air like fireflies dancing in the summer dark. The music is suddenly, brutally silenced. Glass shatters, gasps ripple through the crowd, and a low, guttural growl rumbles across the room like a storm on the horizon. Have you ever trusted someone so fully, so blindly, that when they betrayed you it didn't just break your heart, it felt like a blade twisting into your chest? For me, that someone was my sister, Sophia. She wasn't only my sibling, she was my confidant, my anchor, my best friend. At least, that's what I believed. We shared everything. Or so I thought. But the truth has a way of creeping in when you least expect it. For me, it came at our father's funeral. When the mourners had gone, Sophia pressed a box into my hands. Inside, nestled between his worn wristwatch and a faded photograph, was a secret, one so devastating it unraveled everything I thought I knew about my family. That discovery lit the first spark of vengeance in me, a fire I would nurture quietly, carefully, until the day of her greatest joy, when I would turn it into her greatest ruin. Quick flashes, two little girls laughing in the sunlight, a slow close-up of a handwritten will, a shocked woman's eye widening, and finally, a wedding gown, drenched in creeping shadows. After Dad's death, grief pressed down like a suffocating weight, heavy enough to choke every breath, to smother every thought. The world kept spinning indifferent, while I stumbled through days wrapped in numbness. Sophia, always the polished one, with her color-coded calendars and flawless routines, slid into the role of caretaker without hesitation. Her calm demeanor looked like compassion at the time, but now I know it was a mask. I was drowning in memories and tears, grateful for her efficiency, envious of her composure. I let her take control. A month later, she summoned me back to the old family home. Her voice on the phone dripped with gentle sympathy I didn't recognize then as false. "I've set aside some of Dad's personal things for you, Elena," she said smoothly, her tone warm enough to disarm me. "I thought you should have them before we sort out everything else." The box was plain, just an ordinary piece of cardboard. But when she set it on the polished mahogany desk in Dad's study, the same desk where he used to read the paper every morning, it became something else entirely. Inside lay fragments of him, his leather-bound journal, creased and worn, filled with his steady handwriting, the cufflinks I'd given him on his 60th birthday, engraved with our initials, and a sealed envelope, the paper yellowed at the edges, my name scrawled across it in his final shaky script. My throat tightened. With trembling hands, I tore it open. The paper rustled softly, the quiet of the study pressing in. The note was short, but every word carried the weight of a lifetime. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, I am gone. I've left you the lake house. It was your mother's favorite place, and I know you'll keep it safe. The official copy rests with my lawyer, Mr. Yates. All my love, always. Dad. The lake house. It wasn't about the money or inheritance. That place was a living memory. Summer afternoons by the water, laughter echoing from the dock, the quiet evening when we scattered Mom's ashes under a crimson sunset. The lake house was sacred, stitched into my soul. My fingers shook as I dialed Mr. Yates, voice breaking with equal parts sorrow and hope. He hesitated on the line, his tone thick with regret before he even spoke. "I'm so sorry, Elena," he murmured, sounding truly pained. "Your father updated the will just a week before he passed. The entire estate, including the lake house, was transferred to Sophia. She provided a doctor's statement claiming his mental incapacity. Legally, it's unbreakable." The phone slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a hollow crack as the world tilted. Mental incapacity? A week before he died, Dad had sat across from me in the hospital, chessboard between us. He beat me in 12 precise moves, flashing that sly grin of his. His mind had been unshakable, a fortress. Sophia hadn't just stolen property, she had stolen my last living connection to both of my parents. Worse, she had tarnished Dad's name, branding him feeble and confused to justify her greed. The betrayal cut deep, so deliberate and cold it left me gasping. In that moment, grief curdled into something darker. Something sharper. A blade forged in fire. I whispered a vow into the silence of that room. Sophia would pay. But I wouldn't be reckless. No rash accusations, no careless moves. I would bide my time. Patient. Silent. Waiting. Days slipped into weeks, weeks into months. Seasons turned outside while inside me, the storm only grew. I wore the mask of the broken sister flawlessly. I smiled when I had to, pretended defeat when people asked, and let Sophia offer her empty comfort, her smug little pats on the shoulder, her false sympathy. "Don't worry, Elena," she said once, wineglass in hand, eyes gleaming with smug triumph. "You can visit the lake house any time you want." The very next week, a for sale sign pierced the lawn like a knife. Strangers toured the halls where my mother's laughter once lived. My nails dug into my palms until they bled, but I stayed silent. Meanwhile, in the shadows, I worked. Days filled with research. Nights filled with plans. I remembered a detail Dad once mentioned offhand, a safe deposit box, something he and Mom had kept for years. He'd chuckled, unable to recall where the key had gone. I searched like a thief in the night, creeping through my old bedroom by flashlight. I pulled out drawers, lifted floorboards, turned everything upside down. And then, in the smallest of places, taped inside a chipped music box that still played my childhood lullaby, I found it. A tiny silver key, cool and sharp in my palm. At the bank, I waited under the sterile glow of fluorescent lights until a clerk handed me the box. Inside was treasure, but not the kind that sparkles. There was jewelry, yes, pearls, rings, gold. But the real discovery was bound in leather and ribbon, my mother's diaries. Years of her private words spilled across fragile pages, and within them, a portrait of Sophia I had never seen. A pattern revealed itself, one ink-stained confession at a time. Money missing from purses, jewelry mysteriously gone. Sophia caught pawning my mother's necklace in a dingy shop miles away, tears and excuses tumbling from her lips. My mother's heartbreak seeped through the pages, her desperate hope that Sophia's sickness, this hunger for money and status, might fade. But it hadn't. The most damning entry was 2 decades old, the paper brittle but the truth sharp. My mother described a forged signature, Sophia's at 16, copying her handwriting perfectly to skip classes. She kept the evidence, the real slip with her signature taped to the diary page, right beside Sophia's clumsy attempt. Proof of a pattern. Proof of deception. It was powerful, yes. But I knew it wasn't enough. I needed something current, something undeniable. And then, like fate's cruel gift, it arrived on thick cardstock edged in gold. Sophia and Marcus request the honor of your presence at their wedding. She was marrying into wealth as ancient as the portraits hanging in the family's gilded halls, a dynasty whose reputation gleamed like crystal under sunlight. It was everything she had ever chased, the pinnacle of her ambition, the prize she had clawed toward all her life. And in that instant, I knew. Her perfect day would be the stage for her ruin. My revenge had a date, a time, a spotlight. The plan crystallized in my mind, sharp and cold as ice. The outline of my scheme was simple in concept, but precision would be everything. Each step had to be flawless, threads woven into a web that would close around her when she least expected it. Phase 1. Win her trust. Become indispensable. I slipped into the role of the doting sister, the helper, the one who wanted nothing more than to see her happy. I offered myself as her wedding planner, volunteering for every errand, every detail. Cake tastings where we laughed over tiers of vanilla, chocolate, and buttercream, my suggestions always echoing hers to deepen her trust. Florist appointments where I praised her choices of lilies and roses, even as the thorns reminded me of why I was there. Dress fittings where I gushed over the ivory silk that shimmered like moonlight, secretly noting every hesitation in her posture, every hidden insecurity. She adored it. She adored me. She confided her jitters, her ambitions, her deepest dreams, never realizing I was weaving her confession into a net. Phase 2. Find the weapon. Unearth the irrefutable proof. Marcus's family, old money, rigid tradition, their pride polished over generations, would not tolerate even a whisper of scandal. If they learned of Sophia's past, her theft, her fraud, the alliance would crumble before her very eyes. So I dug deeper. Back into my mother's diaries, my fingers smudged with ink as I cross-referenced dates, memories, and family photos. I prowled the house at night, flashlight trembling, each creak of the old floorboards making my heart hammer. One entry spoke of a forged check. I traced old bank records until the pattern stood out in black and white. The so-called medical note that had stripped me of my inheritance, I picked at that thread next. Befriending a nurse from the hospital, I pried gently, until I learned the truth. The doctor Sophia relied on had a reputation that stank of fraud and scandal. Phase 3. choose the stage. Secure the delivery system. The wedding itself would be my theater, her downfall scripted into the evening. I suggested an audio-visual slideshow, a sweet family tribute, photos and music to charm the guests. Sophia beamed, praising me for being so thoughtful, never seeing the dagger I was polishing behind my smile. Night after night, I built it. A harmless presentation on the surface, but with hidden layers buried inside. Each slide a fuse, waiting for the spark. The closer the wedding crept, the faster my pulse raced, anticipation twisting with fear. What if she suspected? What if she caught me? But she didn't. She was too busy basking in her dream. The day arrived cloaked in sunlight, bright and flawless, though I carried a storm in my chest. The estate gleamed, sweeping lawns manicured to perfection, flowers bursting in bloom as guests spilled onto marble steps in polished shoes and gowns. Sophia glided down the aisle in her ivory dress, a vision of royalty. She smiled at me from the altar, radiant, triumphant. I smiled back, fingers curled around the USB drive in my pocket, the weight of it steady as steel. At the reception, fairy lights twinkled across the ballroom ceiling, chandeliers scattering gold across champagne glasses. Laughter, toasts, the clink of crystal, the air thick with celebration. Marcus's father stood to speak, his voice booming with words of honor, legacy, and family pride. His audience, wealthy and judgmental, hung on every syllable. It was the perfect stage. Then my moment came. A little something from the family, I announced sweetly, pressing the start key. The lights dimmed. The first slides rolled by, baby photos, vacations, smiling portraits of the happy couple. The crowd cooed, chuckled, clapped. Sophia's eyes glistened with joy, utterly unaware. Then, click. The music faltered. The slide changed. On the screen, two signatures side by side. To the left, my mother's authentic script, flowing and alive. To the right, the forged update to my father's will, an imitation so precise it betrayed itself. The room gasped as one. Whispers sparked like fire in dry grass. Sophia froze, her perfect smile cracking. The next slide appeared, a diary page in my mother's hand. Her words highlighted, bleeding across the screen. I fear Sophia's compulsion will destroy her one day. Murmurs grew louder, faces turning, eyes narrowing. Then, the finale, the strike of the blade. The disgraced doctor's photo, his name bold above court records, the words unmistakable. License revoked for fraud, 2015, 2019. Silence. Thick and suffocating. A ballroom turned tomb. I took the microphone, voice clear and sharp enough to cut glass. My sister didn't just steal a house. She manipulated a dying man, conspired with a fraud, and lied to every single one of you. Congratulations, Sophia. You finally got the wealthy audience you always wanted. The room erupted. Whispers sharpened into outrage. Marcus's father stood, his expression thunder. Sophia's dream shattered around her, panic blazing in her eyes. She never danced her first dance. That night, Marcus ended it behind closed doors, his voice cold as ice. The prenup she had fought against now protected him fully. She left with nothing but disgrace. What followed was a storm even she couldn't charm her way out of. The scandal hit the courts, the media feasting on every detail. Evidence piled high, undeniable, crushing her under its weight. The inheritance returned to me, the lake house restored, the judge's gavel a final strike of justice. Sophia was left with frozen accounts, mounting debts, and a ruined name. Now I sit at the lake's edge, where the water ripples gently under the sun, where my mother once stood, where memories live in peace. The grief is gone. What fills me now is something different. Not gloating, not hollow revenge, but balance. Justice. Some say revenge never heals. Maybe that's true. But sometimes it restores what was broken. Sometimes it clears the rot and lets truth breathe again. Swelling music carries us into a final, bittersweet theme. So I ask you, what would you have done? Was I wrong to wait for her wedding day? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you carry a story of revenge, tell it, I might share it next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, so you won't miss what comes next.